I know the head coach, and I can guarantee that he hasn't said to his players, we need to dive and we need to cheat in this game.
Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the First4LCFC Podcast. Again, we're coming at you with a Slavia Prague preview. This time I'm joined with Eddie, whatever you want to call him.
And also, first one would be suffice.
Yeah, either or. I'm sure you've got your own names for him. And also Jonathan, who joined us last time, who's a youth coach at Slavia. So I'm sure there'll be some good insight offered and probably a bit of tales between our legs, at least, following on from the first podcast. Just briefly before we jump into it, how are you, Ed? You all right today?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm a bit tired, busy at work, but I'm glad we got a podcast of all the best people on. So happy days.
Oh, Austin's just cried a sad tear there.
No, Austin's all right, actually. It's Jamie that's the bell end.
But no, it's good. It's a shame that you're tired. Badgering away hard, I'm sure. Okay, so now we're getting joined by John over in Prague, who's just been jogging back from the tram, of all places, to join us for this call. So, John, how are you, first of all?
I was a little bit out of breath, but now I'm because I'm the fittest person, obviously, in Prague. I'm okay, and everything's great, mate. Everything's really good, especially after last week's game, as we're going to talk about, no doubt. Everything's pretty good here.
Yes, you have guessed correctly. That is obviously why we've invited you back on. But yeah, I guess me and Ed have got our tails in between our legs. Pardon the pun. Obviously, the puns must be catching on from your fox hunting banner. Welcoming us last week. But no, on a serious note, obviously all of our predictions, well, other than yours, yours was probably the closest in terms of you were resolute. Ultimately hard to break down. Listening to some of our players post-match, complaining about the pitch, which I didn't personally think should be an excuse for a professional footballer. And some of them were even referring to the Europa League ball, but it's been the same ball throughout the whole tournament. So again, it seems like we're trying to find excuses. But there's other things like diving and things that we'll get on to later on. But ultimately, John, how are you feeling after the first leg?
I was thinking about, when you got back in touch with me, I was thinking about this chat, and what it reminds me of, I don't know if you watch Father Ted, and like where he gets one of those awards, he gets like an award, and then he spends like 20 minutes like railing against the people that like criticised him at school and stuff like that. That was like how I imagined it to be, like, yeah, and you said this about Slavia, and actually this happened, and like who's had the last laugh now, but that's not going to be the case. That was just like a funny thought that entered my head. But in terms of the game last week, yeah, like we're obviously delighted with the performance. The result, really, one of the key facts of the game was obviously that you didn't manage to get an away goal, which is obviously helpful ahead of tomorrow. So that was a big bonus for us. But in terms of the performance, we're probably happy with that. Couldn't have gone much better. Although, to be honest, if you'd have asked me that question at half time, I would have probably been kind of disappointed. But in the second half, I felt that we improved quite a lot, and at the end on the balance of play, the draw was definitely a fair result, but we could have nicked it as well. So not too unhappy with that, really.
So on TV, I think we could see there was I think they said something like 600 fans. I think that seemed a lot. Was that intentional? Were they all claiming to be like coaches, or what was going on in the crowd there? Because it was a bit rowdy, I think. So you obviously managed to get some fans in on the night there.
Well, there was a little bit of controversy, actually. I don't know if I should speak so much about it, but I guess it's common knowledge in Czech Republic. But we had some issues of some special guests were present that perhaps shouldn't have been, I guess. It caused a little bit of controversy. So we had like the former health minister who was preaching about lockdowns, and I think the curfew was supposed to be 9 o'clock, and obviously it was going to be past 9 o'clock that you get home. But he was telling people last month about how much they should be locked down, they shouldn't be going out, and then he's photographed in the VIP box or in the director's box. So I think there was also a tennis player who's a Slavia fan, Kvitova. I think she's quite famous. She was there as well. So we got into a little bit of hot water over that. It wasn't, last week in terms of PR, it wasn't great for us, to be honest. Like with the fox hunting, with the Schmeichel thing, and with the COVID.
Yeah, that was in all our newspapers.
I was going to say, I think your social media admin, or whoever is in charge of the English speaking account, they were struggling. I think Jamie he ended up in the Daily Mail in England. Obviously, it's a global website, but. Yeah, that whole thing with the corset and the lack of homegrown players, and it couldn't have been further from the truth. I don't know if he wears a corset, he might do for all I know, but the homegrown players, I'm not sure who put that research together for that poor journalist. Well, presumably himself, really. So.
Yeah, it was disappointing for us because obviously he's not really related to Slavia. I think the mistake came up.
Yeah.
I don't know, to be honest. I think he lived in the UK for a while. I think I don't know too much about him.
Yeah, well, that went out on the official club YouTube or whatever, wasn't it?
Yeah, I want to know how he knows about Kasper Schmeichel's corset wearing. That's what I want to know.
Well, the secret's out, boys. That's all I'm going to say. But I don't know, man. Well, yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I think he's not. I don't know too much about him, but I know that he's not part of the club. But I think what the mistake was. Well, yeah, but I think the mistake was obviously including it. I do think also it's it got lost in translation a little bit, not literally but culturally. I think here it's not a big deal to make fun of that, and I think it was just kind of banter, Czech kind of banter. The same with the fox hunting thing as well. If you saw some of the stuff that the fans do over here normally, then I wouldn't. That's mild. It's very tame. Really.
Well, no, don't get me wrong. The fox hunting thing. It was almost. Well, it was. I don't think that went down wrong here. I think you could see it was just a bit of fun, if you like, and it made me think because obviously Leicester. Well, when the crowds were in, we loved a good tifo. There was all sorts of stuff going on in every home Champions League game. So it made me think, are we going to sort of react? Well, not react. Well, maybe we had something planned anyway. But
what's your nickname?
Seshivani. It's the stitched ones. Yeah, the stitched ones. That's the translation.
Well, that could go wrong if we tried to make a joke out of that.
Yeah.
But I think well, you're not allowed, though, are you? I think what happens is here the fans get a little bit more autonomy because there's not so much sponsorship and we don't have to be whiter than white, if that makes sense. Whereas in the Premier League, because of all the advertising and because of all the sponsorship and stuff, it's kind of sanitized, isn't it? You have to have a certain amount of your advertising boards, and your tifos have to be kind of made by the club and by the sponsors. So
well, I think a lot of sort of English or Western fans, if you like, that's the one thing we sort of envy is it's football in England in the 80s or the 90s, the iconic times, if you like, for the wrong reasons, football hooliganism and whatnot. We won't get into that, but I've been to a game in Poland myself. And I sat in their cop end, and it's fair to say I'm probably pretty sure it's the same in the Czech, but you've literally got drummers who literally aren't interested in the game. They'll spend the 90 minutes maybe taking it in turns, just sort of G'ing the whole crowd on. Is that something that you'd be familiar with at a normal home game there?
Yeah, they have. So the first thing is that they have flares, which are supposed to be banned, but they're not at all. They've got people checking fans as they come in, but I think some fans kind of get away with taking flares in. They're allowed to take flares in, kind of thing. So they have flares, and then the other thing is we don't have a drummer, but we have a guy at the front of the ultras kind of stands where he'll stand in front and he'll be facing the crowd. He won't even be facing the pitch, and he'll be hanging on the fence with a loudspeaker, basically, screaming, orchestrating songs and getting people G'd up and stuff. So not a drum, but he's got a loudspeaker, but he's awesome. It's good. It's good quality. So
no, it's well, now I'm quizzing you on Czech and Czech culture. Again, this match in Poland I went to, which something alarmed me was there was no away end. It was like, and what I learned afterwards, after speaking to some of the locals, was that there's almost like ally teams in the league, and then there's like fiercer rivalries. So obviously, like in Krakow, you'll have Cracovia versus Wisła, for example, just like you have Prague. But is that a thing in Czech where like some games you'll literally not have? There's no away end, and if anyone does want to support the other team, they'll literally just sort of sit in amongst the home fans. Is that not a thing there?
Absolutely not. No, what they do is that they cage the away fans. Yeah, so it's like all the away fans are in big metal cage. Like they've got like part of the stadium. I don't know if you guys could see it on the broadcast from our stadium, but like the corner. So you've got the fox hunting tifo, and then to the right of that, like in the corner, that's where the away fans usually are. And it's like there's like big metal fences basically to fence off the away fans, and it's because like hooliganism's like a problem here occasionally, especially like if you go to watch Slavia Sparta. It's absolutely crazy environment, like really, really bad. Setting off flares and kind of, trying to get over the barriers and like taunting each other. And it's quite a not scary, but quite intimidating like atmosphere sometimes.
That's right. It's an interesting, again, a debate we could go on about for a long time. But like everyone always says like, oh, the best derbies in the world are like, aren't they? Like, Man U, well, it's not Man U, Man City, is it? Like, but they'll say like fierce rivalries like Man U, Liverpool, or like the Old Firm derby. But like for me, like they've taken sort of the whole atmosphere away from that, haven't they? Like in terms of even if you look at the amount of tickets offered in like the Old Firm, I think it's something stupid like 800 tickets go to like the away team and stuff. But like it would be dead interesting to sort of attend one of these Eastern, or well, in this instance, a Czech proper derby, because I presume like almost the attention isn't even on the pitch, and the games can often, well, by the sounds of it, they don't even disappoint, because there probably are some absolutely, old school horrific tackles still going in out there. Is that right?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like the Slavia Sparta game, I think I've been to about 3 or 4 games, and it's absolutely incredible. Like really, like it's hard to describe like the atmosphere and like just the intensity on the pitch, off the pitch, like the tackles that fly in, that is incredible. Like you're guaranteed a red card basically in every Slavia Sparta game, and the atmosphere is just incredible. The only exception to that was like one of the best games to attend as a Slavia fan, because we'd already won the league the game before, and then we played Sparta on the last game of the season, and so like for us it was like our kind of victory, crowning ceremony, if you like. And I remember like the Sparta stand, I think, or the part of the stand only had like 2 fans in, and usually it's like packed to the brim, and like there was only two Sparta fans wanted to come and watch the game because they didn't want to see us lift the trophy. So I thought that was quite interesting. That's like quite a good kind of reflection of what derbies are like here. In other situations, like we have like tifos lined up by the ultras, and it says like "Death to Sparta" basically as well. Like, and they're like that's revealed like during the game as well. And then like you've got like your flares, and then you've got like Slavia fans wearing "Death to Sparta" like t-shirts and stuff as well. And it's very like it is. I've never experienced anything like it, to be honest.
Which ground did we go to, Chris?
Well, I was just going to ask, because when me and Ed were there, we went to Sparta Stadium, which from memory it seemed relatively sort of central, or maybe it was a short tram ride away, I think. But where, like, is Slavia, is that sort of located, is it, the grounds aren't in close proximity, are they?
No, it's the other side of the city, really.
There was the one with the McDonald's on. Sorry, that's Sparta, isn't it? They've got a McDonald's next door.
We have as well. Like we've got we've got one within the stadium. We've got one like actually within the stadium, like outside. Like we've rented out like space of the stadium for them, like on the outside. It's like next to the club shop basically. And then I think you probably went to Letna. I think it's Letna Stadium. So that was like the national team stadium for a while as well. Until ours was built, but ours is the biggest one now. So it's like the most modern stadium in the country.
It's quite an old school ground. I just remember. But no, I think because it sort of leads on to my next question. Sorry for quizzing you about all things Slavia, but that Sparta historically are, even I think when we went, which is like, you know, five or more years ago now, they were the big team. Like, has that been a change recently? Like, what's led to this sort of change of leadership in Czech football?
I think like it's been a combination really. Like I said last time, I think with our coach, like he changed a lot in Czech football. Like he's very progressive in like how he thinks. Okay, we didn't play like that last week necessarily, but if you usually watch Slavia, we play like quite nice football or quite kind of attacking football. That's the first reason. I think that when he came in, he's won the league twice, I think, out of the 3 seasons he's had with us so far, and we're currently top as well. So like that's the first thing. I think the second thing is obviously money. We got investment from China about 4 or 5 years ago, I think. And then and that kind of helps obviously to sign players. So for example, like Stanchu, do you remember him from last week? Like he's kind of like our playmaker, if you like, and he used to play for Sparta. Actually, he played for Sparta, then he went to which is unheard of, and he went to United Arab Emirates. I think he went to play in the Middle East for a while, and then we bought him back to Czech Republic. So like just to give you some idea of like our pulling power, basically with money, we're able to do that. And then our recruitment has been fantastic as well. So players like Solfal at West Ham, like we bought him in from like another Czech club, whereas Sparta were buying like foreigners who didn't really care about Czech football or didn't really care about the club. We went kind of more down the Czech route, or if we did buy a foreigner, then it was a foreigner who's already played in the Czech league for a while. So I think that helps in terms of the culture of the club. Like it's still Czech, and you know they care about the club. And so like there's lots of different variables really. I think Sparta have kind of lost their way a little bit because
it's interesting. There's certain similarities just from what you said. I mean, maybe it's really clutching at straws, but from the way you've described the sort of rise of Slavia, there's similarities of Leicester obviously being taken over by someone who's got maybe the club's best interests, trying to blood young players, homegrown talent, contrary to what certain reports in Czech say. It sounds like you're trying to do things the right way, and it's certainly reflecting. I mean, like you say, at least the qualifying spot for Europe is almost sort of a guaranteed thing for you guys, isn't it? I think, what is it, top 2 get Champions League qualification, and then you're almost sort of guaranteed Europa League from that as minimum. So, well, no, it's interesting because, like you say, me honestly, I only ever look at Czech leagues maybe if I'm putting a real long shot of a bet on or something. I don't really keep an eye on it as such, but. It was always Sparta. I think a lot of people would say, Sparta Prague are the big team there, but no, they're not. And looking at the recent titles and stuff, it seems like Slavia are, you're 8 points clear at the moment, and then it looks, would you play 34 games in a season? So there's still 14 games left, as we have in the Premier League, but shouldn't be dropping it from there, should you?
Not really, no. We would be quite confident. Like recently, our form has like dipped a little bit. We haven't been great, but I think that's coincided with the Europa League game again. Kind of it's taken our focus away a little bit. Obviously, having to rest players this weekend and also last weekend as well. So I think that's played a part in it. But yeah, in terms of a league, I would be very surprised if we didn't win the title this season, and that would be 3 times in a row. I think the 3rd time we've won it in a row. I think it would be. Yeah, it's pretty. I wouldn't say guaranteed. You never know in Czech league as well, in Czech football. But yeah, I think we're well on the way. So it's positive at the moment. Like I think I said last week, everyone's very positive in the club at the moment, and like it's a good place to be. We're definitely heading in the right direction. And hopefully, this is why Europa League is really important for us, because we missed out on Champions League money this season that we had last season, and I think like for us getting as far in the Europa League's really important, especially because we've got that buffer in the league as well. Like we've been able to focus on Europa League, And yeah, it's good for us financially, and also like in terms of our like PR as well. Before the Champions League last season, not many people outside the Czech Republic had heard of us, so or certainly respected us. Whereas now, I think we got a lot of respect, and we got a lot of plaudits for how we kind of performed in that group. So Europa League is just another step for us really in building a profile. Like I think what I said earlier as well, or in the last episode, was about like communism as well. It's quite interesting in this country, the fact that it only opened up 32 years ago. So for us, like we've got a major job of like opening up the club and opening up Czech football to the world, and Slavia plays a pretty big part in that. So please let us win tomorrow for the sake of Czech football.
Well, I mean, you put together a strong and emotional argument. I was looking through the league now. I mean, I'm gonna lie, not heard of a lot of the teams, but I think it was like Pilsen, is that if that's how you pronounce it? They were like a sort of a force a few years ago. They seemingly dropped off a bit, and then I think really historically, like literally in the 80s. Bohemians, do they have I think they've got a bit of a history, haven't they? But beyond that, I am scratching my head at the teams there. But obviously, like, there's no reason we would know about Czech football. Like you say, it's something that as a country, you're trying to grow, obviously.
Yeah, I think. Well, you've got like if you look at the table, like Slovan Liberec, they were in the Europa League this season, but they didn't qualify from the group. And then like Pilsen, like you said, they played. I think they were in a group with Real Madrid a couple of years ago in the Champions League. So they were good, but they don't really have they can't sustain the success, or they haven't recently. Their academy is perhaps not as strong as Sparta and Slavia, so that's more difficult for them. And yeah, outside of that, you don't really. Bohemians, they're kind of like a historic club, but they're not. We have like a small derby, we call it, against them. They're kind of like our little brothers. So
are they Prague based?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and actually, they're very, very close to us geographically. They're only like a couple of kilometers away, like the stadiums between each other. So, and our academies are kind of linked as well. So, we're the main academy, I would say, in Czech Republic at the moment with Sparta, and then Bohemians players. They're kind of like the second level almost. So any good players from Bohemians will get transferred to Slavia, and like any players who perhaps are not quite good enough at that age category will kind of not drop down, but they'll go to Bohemians. So we're kind of like a feeder, or they're a feeder club for us as well. So we don't really. It's not a fierce derby, if you like, because Bohemians are quite small. But I recommend it. Like Bohemians, if you're going to come back to Prague, then I would go to watch Bohemians game, because it's a great experience. Like the fans are really nice. Like the stadium is like very unique. It's like a proper old school experience. So I would definitely recommend it. You can have a beer and like a bratwurst, like a sausage outside, in the stands as well, and it's just a great atmosphere. So I would definitely recommend Bohemians as a club to come and see for any people in the UK.
No, you just I have just googling actually.
But was from Bohemians travel. For anyone interested, go to bohemians.co.uk. That sounded very much like a paid-for advertisement there.
I wish, mate. I wish.
The joke flat when I said the URL should be .co.uk. Why would a Czech-based club have a UK website?
It would not work very well for their SEO. So that's how are you pronouncing their stadium? The Dolicek.
So the C with like the hook on the top, it's pronounced like CH, like ch, which is, for me, is quite annoying, because like you get Souček, like it's Thomas Souček. It's not like, whatever some English fans will say. So if you have like the hook on the top, it's like a CH sound, like a ch sound. So
quickly, what's the hook on the D then?
The hook on the what do you mean, the hook on the D? There shouldn't be.
There is well, unless Google is wrong, there's a very similar looking sign on top of the D.
Is there?
On the C.
There shouldn't be, unless I don't know. Sometimes with a D, there's like if there's like a symbol on the top, then it's like a D and Y together, like a J.
Look, we're not here to quiz you on grammar. You know, it's just testing the waters. But no, it does look like well, I guess it looked like maybe a League Two ground, but it was built in 19. Well, it was first match in 1932, so yeah, you'd be hard pushed to find a ground that old in England, to be fair. So it's good to stick a bit of history there. So
they had actually, it was quite funny. They had like on the small stand. I don't know if you can see it on the pictures you've got up, but on the small stand they had like when the fans weren't allowed, some of the residents they brought like step ladders out and they were like looking over the wall using a step ladder to watch the game. So, and this is like Czech First Division, you know, like. Be like the equivalent of, I don't know, Bohemians are like mid-table. It'd be like the equivalent of, I don't know, Southampton or something. Southampton fans taking a step ladder to the game. So
it's certainly one of these sort of hipster venues, if you like. It's a horrible phrase that we see bandied around in football. But no, I mean, it looks like there's some form of apartments or office blocks. So yeah, if you don't want a ticket, then just jump in one of these balconies because.
Yeah, it's true. Czech football, as I said earlier, you know, the culture here is very different, but I like it. I really enjoy it because, you know, working in academy football, it's only about the football. It's nothing's commercial, you know, nothing's kind of, people don't have big egos here, so it is just very much about the kids and the football in the academy. And it's something quite pure about it. Like you said, from the 1990s, maybe 1980s. Minus the hooliganism, it's quite good, really, quite a throwback. So,
well, there you go. If your career goes tits up at the club, you've certainly got a place on the Czech travel board. I think you've sold us. I'm just editing the podcast now, and there's no way I can seamlessly just piece that last bit of conversation with John with the next bit, especially without Jamie on this episode. So I'm just gonna. Just be honest and say that was one bit of conversation, but now we're going to jump straight back in to the review of the game with Slavia. And please do stay tuned because John does offer some fantastic insight here. But yes, let's get back to last week's game. Well, that's the thing. I remember, barely remember watching it. I mean, it seems like longer than a week ago, to be fair. But I remember tweeting at half time saying, you know, it's only a matter of time before, you know, Leicester City go on and, score a goal or score a couple of goals, but it was quite literally a game of two halves. I mean, I guess, the point I'm trying to make is that are you often a team that's slower to start, or is that a trait you found over your season, or did you as a fan even feel like, you know, this is one-way traffic and we're bound to concede eventually here?
It was quite funny, really, because I think at half time I listened to the British BT Sport, I think it was. I was watching that coverage, and Steve McManaman at half time, he said, I think Leicester will come on really strong in the second half. Slavia Prague are going to tire. And I thought to myself, like, we're one of the, I think in the Champions League last season we clocked up the most kilometres, I think, in the group stages. So like what we lack in technical ability, like we're one of the fittest teams in Europe, I imagine. So for me, in the second half, I was never really worried about us fading. What I was concerned about is obviously when you concede the first goal against a team like Leicester, then it's obviously difficult for you in terms of, you know, being counter-attacked and leaving spaces open for the dangerous players that you have. So, but in terms of the fitness in the second half, I kind of wouldn't say expected it, but I definitely expected that we wouldn't tire and we would be able to keep up that performance. So. It made me chuckle, you know, Steve McManaman, a few comments during the game were quite surprising from me. But in terms of the fitness, no, not really surprising. Second half were usually quite good, to be honest.
Well, I mean, it wasn't just Steve McManaman, to be fair. It was me as well, because I remember you saying in the podcast that if you had to isolate a weakness in the team, it would have been I think you said centre-backs. And I think early on in the game, there was you know, within the first 5 or 10 minutes, I think there was 2 or 3 opportunities where Harvey Barnes, you know, was cutting in off the wing, and I was thinking, well, if this is what it's like after 5 minutes, I did use the word, fatigue and tire, but if anything, we seemed the team that got more lethargic, sort of as the game went on ultimately. But Ed, bringing you in now, I think after a record amount of time with you not saying anything, I mean, can you add anything? Are you going to add value to this conversation in the sense that do you agree that we didn't really turn up in the second half? I mean, I think we had like a 5 or 10 minute spell in the middle of it, but other than that, would you say that's a fair assumption?
I thought it was a bit of a meh game, completely, and I think our performance, obviously, first thing we've got to think about is how we performed. We're Leicester fans, and it's the Leicester podcast, so regardless of how Prague played, I thought our performance was very uninspiring. At no point do I think, we're playing well. We're going to win. We weren't even close to our best, and to be fair to Prague, it wasn't. They weren't just like sitting back and defending all the time. They gave it a go. They did have some chances to score. Some of them were relatively decent. So I think a draw was probably a fair result. But I also I don't think we can be that poor again in the second leg. And if we are that poor again in the second leg, then we probably don't really deserve to go through into the late rounds of European competition anyway. So having watched the game, I think we're poor, but I'm not super scared going into the second leg.
Boys, as a point of order, can I just jump in there? So one of the things that was like quite annoying for Slavia fans was that the British like commentators and Leicester fans were calling us Prague, and for us it's like not an insult, but it's kind of like, I don't know, it's annoying because obviously there are two teams in Prague, so we've got Sparta and Slavia. So usually what we say to differentiate ourselves is that we're called Slavia and not Prague. So I understand, like not being from Prague or not living in Prague, that maybe people wouldn't understand that, but to call us Prague is like lumping us in with our rivals. So it'd be like calling Man United, Manchester. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, it's kind of
similar to the Inter and Milan sort of debate of Italy, isn't it? Obviously, but okay, well, no.
Well, that's a fair point of order, and I respect the opinions of the right honourable gentleman. And and yes, I will refer to them as Slavia from here on out. I thought essentially the point is, I thought we were poor, but it wasn't like as if we were just bad and we just didn't take our chances. It was Slavia made a good fight of it and had chances themselves, so a draw was probably a fair reflection. And going into the second leg, I hopeful it's both a better result for Leicester, but also a better game because both teams have given themselves a real shot at getting through.
I think I actually agree with you. Like, one of the disappointing aspects from our point of view is, like, in the second half, I felt we got well on top. The first 15, 20 minutes, it looked like we were kind of camped in your half. And then all of a sudden, like, we started, I don't know if it was like panicking. We took off Stanchu, who's like our playmaker. I think we took off Kukta, striker, and we brought on a couple of other lads. And the rhythm that or the momentum that we built kind of died. And we went a little bit long and we were playing kind of crude football, which isn't really Slavia. I think it's difficult really because, like, we played against Sevilla in the Europa League a couple of seasons ago, and the ball just wasn't on the floor. And in that game, like, we did that almost intentionally because when you give a Spanish team possession of the ball on the floor, then they're just going to dominate you. So we put the ball in the air a lot, and we bullied them almost into winning the game. And I think what was disappointing from our perspective is that we were playing pretty good football, kind of high energy football at the start of the second half, and then all of a sudden we kind of reverted to kicking long balls. I don't know whether we kind of were happy with a 0-0 and we just wanted to protect that, or if we panicked, or maybe I don't really know the dynamics behind that. But from our point of view, I felt that the last 20 minutes were kind of it was a poor spectacle from both teams, really.
Yeah, when it's a two-legged affair, you got to think about like it's not just the result in itself. It's half time, and if both teams were offered the chance of going in at 0-0, whilst neither team would probably be buzzing about it, it's certainly not an awful place for anyone involved, and both teams have a real shot going into the next leg. They've also got sort of a sighter at the opponents, so they've at least got some idea what to expect. And I do expect a much more sort of attacking game because there's, it's knockout football. There's a lot at stake.
I'm not sure I agree totally. I'm not sure, but it'll be interesting to see.
Disagree, Chris.
If our
It's
listeners
what the fans love to hear.
I think it's an awful result to come away from any first leg away from home not having scored, because I mean, whether you like it or dislike it, the away goals rule is a thing, and whilst we win regardless of whatever the scoreline is, we go through. A score draw now isn't. It's not going to be enough. So ultimately, we're going into it with a bit more pressure on our shoulders. So for me, I'd be,
Then you'd say if we play, and here's some semi-disrespect coming, so apologies in advance to fans of Slavia. But I would say when you are a Premier League side with all the money behind you, with a really high quality squad, if we got all excited when we drew Slavia Prague because we thought it was a game that if we're at our best, we would get through. And if we come out of that tie with 2 draws and getting knocked out on away goals, then do we really think we deserve to be with some of the European elite in the later rounds of knockout football? I'd say if we want to be seen, obviously we've progressed a lot in recent years, but if we want to make that step up and be seen as this established side both in the Premier League and in the European leagues, then this is a game that we should, at home, with near enough a full, a very strong team available, we should be confident going into the match that we can win it. So yes, obviously it'd be nicer if we came from the home leg with a win or even score draw, but we need to be confident going into this match.
Well, I mean, today news has broke that James Maddison will be missing for the next few weeks. So ultimately, that injury layoff starts at home to Slavia. But I agree. You still think that at home, you're used to the surroundings. If players did have complaints about the pitch, there is no excuses now. Like, we do have to go out and play our game, and ultimately, I am still optimistic that we can come away with a victory, but we'll see. I don't want to be too cocksure this time, because obviously that sort of backfired on us all last time, and Slavia did play a very good game. But something I wasn't a fan of, and I don't think any spectator, even a neutral probably, unless you actually hate Leicester, was a fan of, is the theatrics. John, is this something that is a norm in the Czech top tier or in Czech football? Or was it? Do you feel like it was just a form of time wasting that you use in European competition? I'm not sure. Please enlighten us. What was going on with your players? They were going down like flies.
Yeah, I think it's quite laughable, really. Again, going back to Steve McManaman, I remember there was an incident in the first half, I think, where one of our lads went down, and then Steve McManaman said, "Yeah, you're going to get this in Europe," and I thought that was on Twitter. I left a comment. It was like a Brexit Britain kind of comment, like all Europeans are the same, like we're all diving, like the Premier League is the best, blah blah blah, whatever. And
quite
actually,
ironic, of course, coming from a Liverpool fan with Mo Salah as well at the
yeah, and an ex-player of Real Madrid, right? You should know better. But to be fair, for me that was quite laughable. And then 2 minutes later, I think Albrighton, he went down, and there was a big scream, and I was like, and Steve McManaman was he basically silent, and I was like, okay, like you can point, footballers these days, we all know what the modern game's like in every country. Players do go down. It's like a game, it's a feature of the game. I don't agree with it personally. I don't think many fans do, but if it goes for your team, you're a fan, and if it goes against, then do you know what I mean? It's like one of those kind of double-edged kind of things. And I think in answer to your question, in the Czech League, definitely not. Referees are extremely lenient. We do have VAR, to be fair, but the referees are usually quite lenient. At the weekend, we had an incident against one of the teams kind of in the lower parts of our division. We played away from home against them, and one of their players, he did like this, I don't know, what can only be described as a karate kick, and like kicked one of our guys in the neck. They had a look on VAR, and I think he got a yellow card, but no more. And that was it. That was the end of the matter. So if you ever watch a Sparta Slavia derby, you'll see that players are kicking each other all across the pitch, and it's a very, very physical league, very physical kind of game in Czech Republic, and that's why you probably saw that sometimes we were quite physical as well, or like high, had lots of energy and athleticism. And I think really, when you look at the Premier League, in my opinion, it's one of the worst leagues in the world in terms of diving and time wasting, and we'll call it like sportsmanship. So, yeah, or gamesmanship, sorry. And in my opinion, I thought that was quite hypocritical in general terms. But in terms of the actual game itself, there were occasions, I think, on both sides where there was kind of a bit of time wasting or so shall we say some exaggeration, I would say. But I don't think it's necessarily a feature of Slavia or Czech football, definitely not. And I think it just happens. And I think also what happens is, as the stakes are kind of raised, and if you're in knockout football, in a high stakes game like this, then I think that it's probably going to be inevitable in some ways. But I don't agree with it, and I don't think the club would condone that either.
I think that's spoken like a true ambassador of the club there. I mean, for me, I don't think I do agree with you. I think that maybe sort of the way you've sort of phrased it doesn't make sense, because obviously saying in the Czech League, you're hard as nails, but you come up against, well, in this instance, English opposition in Europe, and that sort of mentality changes. So I guess what I'm asking is, why do you not do that in the Czech League more so if it's working to your benefit?
I think also it's a difficult question to answer, because the culture is very different from a Europa League game to playing against an English team to playing against a Czech team. Like when you play against Czech teams, like especially teams, Slavia we tend to dominate the league. So when teams play against us, they're trying to do everything they can to kind of knock us out of our stride. So I think that it's naturally a physical game anyway, and you almost don't need to dive, because it's a physical game. People throw themselves about. I think in terms of Czech football, it is like that. Like I said, my point, I think, is the fact that in the Europa League, it's more of a high stakes kind of game, and I think that we wanted to keep ourselves in the game. I think it's a subconscious thing. I know the head coach, and I can guarantee that he hasn't said to his players, we need to dive and we need to cheat in this game. I think players, the mentality of players, perhaps they're desperate that they want to win the game, and they're trying their best to win the game. And in a game where you're playing in the Europa League, where it is do or die, then I think that can happen, especially when we're playing against a team like Leicester. The players would have been kind of very switched on and desperate to succeed as well. So not to defend it, but just to kind of explain it. But in terms of, but having said that, sorry lads, but in having said that, I don't think it was any worse than other, some Premier League games, and like for example Mo Salah you were talking about, and even last night Southampton Leeds, you got the incident for the penalty where their winger, I think Teller, he dived in the box as well. So I think it's just a fact of the game, and I don't think we were necessarily any worse than anybody else. Maybe I'm blinkered, I don't know.
You brought a fair argument to the table, but what worries me almost is that obviously if we do go behind tomorrow, I do feel like that would be even more of a sort of a prominent, because obviously as a team with an away goal, you've got a reason then to sort of see out the game and want to waste as much time as possible. I mean, if that was happening in the first leg, hopefully, conceding the opening goal will be worrying enough. So, if we concede first, we sort of almost deserve to be played at that game. But Ed, bringing you back into it, what do you make of John's points? Do we look at foreign leagues and almost just associate diving with them when we've got a big problem in the Premier League, or do you actually think that this was an exception? It was almost a bit silly at times, notably maybe the Kelechi incident a couple of minutes after he came on. But then just before you answer it was very similar to the Sutek and Mitrovic incident, wasn't it? Which obviously the former Slavia player got sent for. So. But yes, please answer.
I think players were just diving around Kelechi because they were aware of such a great striker and they didn't want John to have egg on his face.
To be fair, he's now banned for the second leg, of course.
Yeah, so he doesn't have to worry about that threat. Just Jamie Vardy now. But I get the point. I think it is a stupid, lazy commentator thing. Like, this is what you expect in Europe, as if Europe is like a homogeneous place, and it's like, other than going and playing the odd match, I don't know what he knows of Czech Republic and anywhere east of there. Like, if you want me to be honest, like his experiences in Spain or what you see in the bigger leagues like Italy and stuff, these things are commonplace. And then obviously we have a lot of European or South American players play here, and it's very easy then to see if they're the ones doing the diving, just to assume that that's the norm everywhere. And it's just like John said, it's pretty stupid from all players, and it's kind of embarrassing at times, because sometimes you can sort of see what they're trying to get at, and that there was probably a foul and they've just made it look a bit worse, which is like fair enough. But like when they're trying to force it, everyone's stupid. And I also think the Albrighton yelp, I wasn't even watching at the time. It was in the background, and then I heard it and I thought his leg had snapped or something. Then he was smiling like 10 seconds later. But that's more of a comment on diving in the game than the actual match. Yeah, I think it's part of the professionalism and trying to get everything. And maybe they're not normally like that. Like John said, in the games in the Czech League, they are the big dogs, and they don't need to. They're better than everyone else, and if they play their best, at least in 90% of the games, they should get a result. And maybe other teams are being a bit tactical and playing the game to try and compete with them, and maybe the foot may have felt boot may have been on the other foot here, and that was not that they are an extremely weak team, but maybe that's part of the game that they could manipulate to give them an even better chance of going through. And if that's the case, then we need to be aware of it and not put ourselves in silly positions, which means they could punish us through such means.
I think I agree with you, mate. And I think also that it reminds me a little bit, like when Liverpool go, when they play like, I don't know, Burnley at home or someone like that. And then Klopp at the end of the game comes out and he's like complaining that they've played a low block or they sat in behind the ball. And you're thinking, what, you want Burnley to come out and like gegenpress and, play like a high pressing game? Because if you do that, then they're going to get picked off. So I think teams, especially in, like I said, in Europa League, you do what you think you can do to win the game. And, whether we agree with it or not, like what they did actually ultimately ended up in us getting a fairly decent result out of the game. So, I think it's a means to an end, isn't it?
Mm.
Well, sorry, Ed, have you got anything else to say on
No, I was just going to agree. It's like, course, we all want to watch like great football and it to be end to end, like El Clasico or recently like Man City, Liverpool games or whatever. But you just got to accept sometimes there will be two teams who are just not good enough and they need to play a certain way. Sometimes it will be one team that's better than the other and the other team need to think of different tactics to get the best result for them. And it's like, at the end of the day, Sparta. Oh no, I'll try again. Slavia.
Oh my God, lads, I'm finished. I'm out.
Slavia want to win the game, and or at least on paper, their team isn't as good as us, so they're going to do whatever they can to win. So yes, it's a bit underhand tactics at time, but I'm not going to hold any qualms with them about that. Like, they want to win just as we do. We'll use one tactic and they will use whatever tactic they think's best.
What it comes down to is the referees as well. Like I was talking on Twitter last night and after the Teller incident, and like what I don't understand is why referees, if they think someone's dived or a simulation, then they've got a yellow card in their pocket. Why don't they use it? Because if you start throwing out yellow cards for simulation and diving, then players will stop. So I think it's very much in the hands of the referee, and the rules of the game dictate that simulation or diving is now punishable with a yellow card. So I think it's about enforcement by the referees as well. I think that's something throughout the whole of football that needs to improve.
Well, I mean, you can't disagree. I mean, like I said, Kelechi got booked for what he did. I mean, in my opinion, like, to be fair, like, out of all the incidents, I mean, his arm was raised, so. But I think it's more the reaction afterwards. But nonetheless, it's a healthy debate. Good points raised. But I mean, looking towards the game now from a technical point of view, I'm just looking at Slavia's. I think it was a 1-1 away draw against a lower team in the league.
Did I read they played like the reserves or something, or have I made that up?
Yeah, we were dreadful lads, to be honest. But it was quite funny because if you saw that game, if you're complaining about our pitch, like I don't even want to think about what your views would be on the pitch that we had to play on Saturday, because it was absolutely atrocious, to be honest. Completely, it was more like a farmer's field than a football pitch. So, just if I were you, I'd be thinking yourself lucky, that you played on our pitch and not theirs, because some of the pitches in Czech Republic are absolutely shocking. Absolutely.
Well, no, I just did a quick Twitter search, but there was a picture from one of the games last year, and I presume it would have been something similar to this. And it's not great. It looks like it's got sort of how can I describe this for a podcast? But almost like tiger marks running across it, which look like almost standing water in this instance. But yeah, either way, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look like sort of playing on a school field, to put it politely. But as Ed said, was that a weakened team? Was there any rotation, or was it just not a good game for you guys?
Yeah, we rotated massively. I think we changed seven of our players from the starting lineup, I believe, and we tried, because it was 1-1 with about an hour to go, with about 30 minutes to go, and we brought on some of our big, kind of more important or better players, shall we say, towards the end of the game. But Sima was rested completely, so he's going to be fresh for the game tomorrow. So, but yeah, it was a heavily rotated team. So
there you go. It's hot off the press. So it's fair to say, obviously, you guys are certainly putting the majority of your eggs in this instance in the Europa League basket, and rightfully so as well. Obviously, both teams well and truly in it. I mean, we didn't rotate at all. Well, I mean, there was changes to the team, but we still had to play a strong team against Aston Villa, and presumably we're going to try and be as strong as we can tomorrow as well. But I mean, looking at a preview, are you expecting? Is it going to be a similar sort of game plan, to fend us off and then grow into it? I'd imagine that'd make sense, wouldn't it? I don't see you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see you guys coming and sort of putting us on the back foot, or do you think that could be a tactic employed tomorrow?
I think we played Midtjylland, I think, in the Champions League qualification earlier this season, and we were winning 1-0 Well, we were going through on away goals. I think we scored the first goal away from home. We were going through, and the first 20 minutes, 25 minutes, we tried to batter them to score the away goal. So that's one way it could go, that we might start fast and try to get ahead. Because if we score the away goal first, then it's going to be very difficult for you after that. So that's one way. That's one way the coach might be thinking. Or, the tighter it is, if we can grab a goal kind of later on in the game, then obviously that makes it even more difficult for you. Maybe he's going to keep it tight. I would favour the first one, to be honest. Knowing him as I do, I think he's usually quite brave in how he goes about things. So I think he'll try and grab an away goal in the first 20 minutes, and then we'll see. Because the thing is, we got a free hit almost, because even if you score the first goal, like, it only takes a goal to send us through, right? So I do think that we have got a little bit to play with in terms of the first 20 minutes. If we push, then we have that luxury. So
that is a very valid point, and I think that's almost what I was trying to say earlier when I was talking about away goals, but I sort of lost myself. But no, it's true, isn't it? It is almost like a free pass until you go 1-0 down, because all you have to do is still score the same amount of goals to take the game. So I guess that's what my reservation is. I think ultimately, if there is an early goal either way in this game, it turns into an open fixture. Well, maybe not. I don't know. Would it? Because even if you score, then I reckon it could be cagey. But either way, the longer it stays 0-0, I think we start getting jittery and we start getting nervous, because and it's not even that, because ultimately Slavia have experience in European competition. Like, that's a whole different debate about how easy it is to qualify from yours. Either way, you're still going through qualifying rounds. Even if you're dropping out of the Champions League, you're still playing these European ties. And ultimately, as Leicester City, we've played in the Champions League, a few years ago now. And before that, we hadn't been in Europe for 15, 16 years. So that in itself it does hold some sort of merit, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so. Like, if you look at how we played against Sevilla a couple of years ago, and we beat Sevilla and then we lost against Chelsea. But even the game at Stamford Bridge, I think we lost 4-2 or something like that. And we were losing 3-0 and we brought it back to 3-2, and we were very kind of, we created a lot of chances that night as well. The game was quite open. So I do think, we do have the experience of those kind of tight fixtures. The game against Sevilla actually was at home, and we scored in the 120th minute, I think, to win that one. So we're definitely, that was, by the way, that was absolutely incredible, because it was a full stadium, and it was just absolutely nuts. I think we were going out after 90 minutes. We basically rescued the tie. I think we scored with 5 minutes to go in normal time, and then in extra time we were also losing again, and we needed to score 2 goals, and we scored 2 goals in the last 10 minutes of extra time, and the last one was the last kick of the game. So it was like a goal-mouth scramble, and you can imagine the reaction when we won that. So hopefully we get a similar experience tomorrow night.
I mean, I'm not sure what it is, and Ed, don't worry, I'm going to bring you in if you're still with us here. I am feeling nervous about this game, and I'll give you a reason why. Because so many times, well, obviously not so many times, but there has been occasions this season, look, we're second or third, whatever we are in the Premier League, but even when we're 2-0 up, as we were at the weekend, absolutely cruising, we can just switch off in games. And obviously your coaches would have done their research, and they'll know that. And that backs up your point again. They'll be saying, well, they probably won't be saying if you go 1-0 down, because obviously that's negative, but they'll know that you can afford to go 1-0 down, because this Leicester City team has, and it's been a trait of ours, for the past few seasons, that we just go missing in games. It's probably a lot lesser this season. I mean, last season it literally led to a capitulation for the second half, but we have got a missing player in Maddison, who, regardless of what you say about the opposition, he is that player who will find that magic pass. I mean, thankfully, obviously, we've got other, namely Harvey Barnes, who's massively informed, but any opposition who comes against us will be saying, don't let your head drop against these guys, because they will give you 10, 15 minutes of a chance in this game. So, I mean, Ed, notoriously confident, almost borderline arrogant at times as a Leicester City fan. Are you going to make any bold predictions? Is it going to be an easy win tomorrow? Basically, is what I'm asking.
It's going to be 2-0. I've not got any qualms. I've obviously watched the first game. I've thought about it, had time to think about and reflect on it, and just like how this is why I think it's going to be a good game. Just like what John said, they feel like they've got a free hit. They can concede. Doesn't really change much for them. They're also underdogs, so they've not really got nothing to lose. I think, from my perspective, I see it like going back to deserving it. Like if we as favourites can't get a single win against this side over 2 legs, then we don't really deserve to go through. So I think we will. And if we play as good as we can, at the end of the day, this is where my confidence comes from in certain games. If Slavia, I nearly got it wrong again. Jesus. Right. If Slavia play the best 10 out of 10 performance they've ever done, it doesn't guarantee they'll win, because if we play a 10 out of 10 the best we've done, we should win. We are the better team. So if we play to our strengths and play well on the day, we should be fine. Obviously, we may not play to our 10 out of 10, at which point we have to look at ourselves. But I'm going into it with nothing but confidence.
I mean, it's needless to say, I'm not sharing your...
Well, if we don't go through, it's very possible that we don't go through. And if Slavia win and beat us over 2 legs, or even draw whatever on away goals, and I'll say, well done, over the 2 legs, you probably deserved it, and we weren't good enough. So hopefully we'll see you in the Champions League next season.
Well, it's a whole new debate, but I think it's one for another episode. Hopefully not, though. But if we go out tomorrow, I feel like there's more detrimental effects mentally, and just like it'll be like a bit of a sucker punch, because it'll be like everyone's gassing Leicester up as being this team who's, with Champions League not contenders, but pushing for Champions League. But is it fair to say, do we even deserve a Champions League space? If what's the point? I'd see us as almost like sort of wasting the space of the Champions League, because we can't get past the last 16 in the it's last 32, isn't it, of the in the Europa League. So, but I don't know. Hopefully we don't have that discussion. The rational bit of my head is saying, look, we're at home. It's probably a slightly bigger pitch. It's somewhere where we're familiar. The pitch is going to be pristine. We just have to play our game and win. But I'll save my prediction for the end. I'll go over to John now.
If we lose, learn from it and then move on. Hopefully we'll be in Europe next year and we won't make the same mistakes.
That's very...
that's why I'm chilled out about it. We should win, and if we don't, there's a reason for it. Learn from that reason, and hopefully if we come across a similar experience in future, we will have learned from it and won't make the same mistakes.
I mean, ultimately, this is a one-off game. It's a cup final of sorts. That it's
cliche.
Well, because let's compare it to some FA Cup game like these. Well, I'm not comparing it because of the stature of the team, but any team on their day will fancy their chances against another one. Say we've already got ourselves to blame that we couldn't have done it over 2 legs if it doesn't happen. But again, we are being very negative. But I guess I'm just being more conscious of trying to be more balanced. I mean, I was doing a fair bit of translating of tweets last time when Slavia account generously retweeted us, which you don't often get from official club accounts, but there wasn't the most pleasant words being exchanged from your fans. I think ones that...
Well, maybe I should say something about my confidence now, just to get me out of the doghouse.
I think you've already offended them all when you
what I want to say is genuinely, I think they're a decent side on the European stage. Obviously, they're not one of the mega sides, but they're holding their own against some decent sides, and I think they held their own against us in the first leg. I just think if we play to our best, we should win. I don't think they'd argue with that. I just think I'm also aware if we don't play for our best, they could beat us. I'm just hopeful that won't be the case.
I feel like you're now a marked man in the city, or at least half.
I won't be going to Prague anytime soon.
I mean, we've got one or two stories from our last trip. We'll probably for another time, or at least off air, for our own credibility. But nonetheless, John, I'm sure you've got your stories about Prague, but we're not going to ask you about them either. Well, how do you see, take your Slavia tinted glasses off, or leave them on? Maybe you've got a right to be confident. Are you confident about tomorrow, and how's it going to end? Are you going to be progressing?
I'm going to go 1-1, boys. I think 1-1, and I think that because it's a free hit for us, I think that we will play with freedom. I think that we'll play with a lot of confidence. After Saturday, after this weekend's performance, where we were poor, I think we've got things to prove as well. I think that we rested some of our bigger players, our better players. I think that we'll be fresh, and I think my feeling is that we'll get an early goal, and then we'll see what Leicester are made of. I think that's my prediction.
There you go. You've done that very efficiently, and well, it's quiet confidence is what's leaking from that. I mean, for me, if I have to now put a prediction, obviously, naturally, I'm going to go over Leicester City win. But I just don't know. I'd love it to be sort of plain sailing, but I do think Slavia are going to score. And almost a perverse bit of me for the entertainment thinks that Slavia are going to take the lead, and it's going to be a very uncomfortable, 45 or 50 minutes, and there could be some late drama at King Power tomorrow. So I'm going to go 2-1, but I think we're going to do things a tricky way. But nonetheless, I think I'm not going to be too confident this time. But look, we'll see. This is a podcast that is going to be going out within 24 hours of the match. This time tomorrow we'll be in fact playing, maybe even losing, winning, who knows. But again, thank you, John, for joining us. I'm sure we'll be exchanging a few messages either before, during, or after the game tomorrow, and then there'll be confidence from one of us at least. But thank you again for coming on. We've never done this sort of feature before, well, namely because we're not really in Europe and we didn't have a podcast last time, but it's good having an English speaking person come on, and hopefully we get to do it with other guests in the future. But thanks for
next round.
Yeah, all the best to you and Slavia, and I hope things work out for you and your career there as a aspiring coach as well, and for your amateur team as well, that you mentioned off air earlier as well.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's been really fun, lads. Honestly, it's great. Obviously, being out in Prague, not having really a connection with the UK in terms of football at the moment, then yeah, it's been really nice to chat to you, and good luck, but not too much, obviously, as I always say. So.